Under the Trump administration, immigration policy in the U.S. continues to shift rapidly, marked by sweeping enforcement actions, narrowed pathways to legal entry, and heightened uncertainty for immigrant communities. Recent developments include the State Department's decision to restrict immigrant visa interviews to consulates in applicants' countries of residence or nationality, the expansion of U.S. citizenship and immigration services powers to hire armed agents with arrest authority, the termination of temporary protected status for nearly 270,000 Venezuelans, and the largest single-site immigration raid in U.S. history, where 475 workers were detained at a Hyundai LG plant in Georgia. Joining us now to help unpack these developments are Abbey Eusebio, manager of the Anti-Hate Action Center at the Chinese American Service League, Jesus del Toro, editor-in-chief of La Raza, and Cholula Chang, senior Know Your Rights attorney with the Immigrant Legal Defense Project. Thank you all for joining us. I want to start the conversation with you, Jesus. This past weekend, and we saw, as Angeles told us, protests happening in downtown Chicago in anticipation of the continued National Guard threats looming and community events like El Grito canceled. How are immigrant communities processing this moment, and what are you seeing on the ground in terms of fear, resistance, and preparation?
Thank you, Hugo, for having me. And as you mentioned, we are now experiencing a situation that is full of fear, unfortunately, full of tension, because the threat of the presence in a larger way of ICE agents and even the National Guard possibility has been making for all the immigrant communities. In my case, I know more the Latino communities, but for any immigrant communities, these times very complicated, very perilous, very frightening. And also because it's not just that these operatives, this new policy, this new approach is threatening just the undocumented immigrants. In fact, in the case of the Latino communities and in the case of many other diversity communities, it's a direct attack to our identities, to our heritage as a whole, which is also more frightening to the communities because, as we saw, for example, in California, racial profiling arrests are now again valid after this recent judicial decision, and the fear that this could happen here in a larger way is very hard. But in the same case, the communities are resilient. Local organizations are working a lot to inform our community about rights, like the two organizations that have here, and others are working very hard. ICER, for example, Resurrection Project, OCADE. They are, and many others are working very hard to help our community to learn our rights, to defend our rights, and also to help our community to navigate, if this is the correct word, no, these hard moments. For example, by protesting if you want to, but peacefully, with order, with respect. And in the case of the past and coming Mexican independence celebrations, of course, our community is deciding to do them. The 26th Street parade is going to happen. El Grito in Pilsen is going to happen. Unfortunately, we have this Grito Chicago here in the downtown area council, but our communities are thinking that our pride, our heritage is paramount, is a key component of America, and then we will celebrate it peacefully and organizing ourselves in order to be able to resist and to, well, be thinking ahead in this coming or possible operations by ICE or other federal agencies.
And there's a lot of conversations that are being had, families talking about what to do should you be stopped by ICE or be detained. And these are real conversations that people are having over this, as you mentioned, this cloud of fear. When you see things, Laura, like what we saw in the raid in Georgia, 475 workers, most of them South Korean, detained, it really sends shockwaves to our communities to really, that says, well, if it happened there, it could certainly happen here, and certainly the continued rhetoric that we're hearing from Washington, D.C. I wanted to ask you, in regards to families and that particular incident, how are you advising communities to prepare for similar scale operations, especially in light of the expanded U.S. CIS powers and the threat of ICE raids?
Yeah, there are two lessons Chicago families should take away from this incident. The first lesson is that everyone, regardless of their immigration status, is protected by the Constitution. Everyone must know their rights and exercise every single one. Demand warrants, remain silent. The second lesson is that families must create safety plans in the event a family member is detained. NIJC is keeping a close eye on how USCIS does use its new expanded powers. If you are currently or plan to file an application with USCIS, we recommend to seek out legal advice with a reputable attorney or legal service provider. I encourage families to visit our website for resources on all these subjects at immigrantjustice.org. Finally, if you see an ICE raid, report it and document. Do not let ICE work in the shadows.
Yeah, and that's very important information. Don't be afraid, be informed. There are resources out there at your disposal and people willing to help you in order to walk through those situations that hopefully won't happen, but it's very important to prepare, as it's already been said. Abbey, federal rhetoric is intensifying. How are these developments intersecting with anti-immigrant hate and broader patterns of racial scapegoating? Those trends that we see in data, how is CASL helping communities respond, not just with protection, but with solidarity as well as healing?
Yeah, the changes in immigration policy are resulting in this rise of anti-immigrant rhetoric and blatant racial scapegoating. From the API perspective, we've been seeing examples of how this increase in anti-immigrant rhetoric is playing out, where you see travel bans that are specifically targeting specific countries and regions such as Asia, African countries, Middle Eastern countries. Chinese nationals are being revoked of their student visas, or they're being taken away and not renewed. Other things happening across the world. We're seeing also in New York, we had the Democratic mayoral candidate Zohran Mamadi win the Democratic mayoral race, but that has now caused an increase in anti-Muslim, anti-Arab rhetoric. You're seeing that online. There's this fear that's being stoked that there's going to be a Muslim takeover if he becomes mayor. And so we're trying to make sure that we are monitoring this, responding to it, and trying to prevent more of this kind of rhetoric from happening. And locally here in Chicago's Chinatown, we saw that in May there were 3 Chinese nationals who were arrested right actually by our building. And unfortunately, that even within the API community is increasing also this rhetoric of, oh, well, those criminals deserved it. And really making sure that people feel like these people are being arrested are point-blank criminals without due process and their fair time in court, and making sure that people understand that these are cases that affect all immigrant communities, and we should be mindful of how the negative impact is resulting from this.
Yeah, and it's very important to continue to talk about, even though, especially in media, it seems to be that when we talk about immigration, it's the Trump administration attacking the Hispanic Latino community with an emphasis on Mexicans and Mexican Americans, but we're talking about all immigrants. So it's very important, and it's our responsibility in media to provide greater visibility and voice to all communities. And we saw this type of scapegoating at the height of COVID-19, especially with the Asian community, and we're seeing it again. I have one last question for all of you. In moments like this, when immigrant communities are facing both policy threats and public fear, how do you, in your roles as legal advocates, journalists, community organizers, working together to build trust, share accurate information, and counter misinformation that can spread so quickly in this type of crisis? I'll start with you, Jesus.
Well, we try as much as possible to interact with all the very relevant organizations that are defending the rights of our immigrant communities, to have trusted sources of whatever information we disseminate to our users and readers. because that is the most important thing. In these moments, misinformation, disinformation is rampant and create a lot of chaos, additional problems to what we already have. And then the need and the importance of trusted, fact-based news and also advice in some ways, even if as media we do not provide legal advice, but we refer to the experts that do that. That is very important. And also because, as mentioned, our whole communities are threatened, not just if you have certain status or not. And in that context, we believe that highlighting the great solutions, the great relevance, the great achievements of our communities is key, because that shows that our communities are part of the American society, are contributing in a larger way to the wellness of everybody, and also their traditions, our heritage, our identity is wonderful. It's not something that we will allow to be stigmatized and diminished, as unfortunately we are seeing these efforts. We are resistant, and we try to keep going with this good message, even if, of course, these are hard moments, difficult moments for many, and we try to balance both kind of information to inform, but also to empower our communities in these times.
Very important, and La Raza does an excellent job of informing, educating, and empowering the community to act. And it's that type of collaboration also that's needed, which is very wonderful to have this platform, to have you three experts really come together and provide the information that our audience needs. Laura, you're already given some really good information of how families prepare. What else can you share with us?
I will finally just encourage the public to report any potential ICE sightings to the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights Family Support Hotline. That number is 855-435-7693.
Thank you very much. And Abbey, you have the last word.
So solidarity in numbers is really our shield. Our legal protections are our shield, our weapon against these harmful attacks, and the education, as mentioned, that this is where we're going to keep Chicago a hard city to navigate by these federal agents, because we're informed. And we need to all, make sure that we're only spreading truth, information, validated resources, and not panic, so that we are informed and we do stay safe. We need to check on our neighbors, check on our loved ones, make sure that they have the information they need around their rights, and join the efforts that a lot of our organizations are doing around canvassing neighborhoods, making sure people have those resources and the information about their rights, and also continue referring people to these trusted organizations such as NIJC, the Resurrection Project, ICER, and Chinese American Service League, because we do have the services to help these families that are impacted navigate this really challenging time by connecting them to legal resources, connecting them to mental health resources, connecting them to information about public benefits that they actually might also be eligible for. So together, we're going to make sure that we keep our city safe and protected.
Yeah. Abbey, Jesus, Laura, thanks again for your time. And thank you for standing in the gap for our communities.